Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Crypt Finder. I bet if you are here right now, you are a real horror aficionado. And I would bet my bottom dollar that you have seen Carrie. Stephen King's first novel, which was published in 1974. It was brought to the screen the first time by Brian De Palma, who was becoming somewhat of a master of suspense, and he would go on to prove that, of course, in the movies Dressed to Kill in 1980 and also Blowout in 1981. His 1976 adaptation of Carrie, it was more than just a retelling of King's work. Where he really hit the mother lode was the very inspired casting of Sissy Spacek, whose performance just went on to become the stuff of horror legend. Now, you all know, between you and me and the crypt wall over there, that anytime you have any sort of huge blockbuster success, Hollywood is going to do its darndest to try to capitalize on that. And so you saw a wave of sort of imitators coming out. And so you saw in 1978 titles like Jennifer started hitting the theaters, trying to capitalize on the themes of telekinesis and revenge. But it wasn't just the big screen that took notice. TV networks were also eager to jump on the bandwagon as well. And that's how you ended up with the made-for-TV movie, The Initiation of Sarah. But the one that I wanted to talk about tonight, it's another made-for-TV movie. It aired in 1977, and the film is The Spell. This was directed by Lee Phillips, who was a veteran of TV drama. He did episodes of Peyton Place and Gunsmoke, but The Spell really centers on Rita Machen. She's portrayed here by first-timer Susan Myers, and Myers delivers a performance. It just perfectly encapsulates the pain, the rage of being a teenager just pushed to the brink. Rita's shy, she's overweight, she's often ridiculed by her peers and overshadowed by her younger, more athletic sister Christina, played by a very young Helen Hunt long before those Oscar-winning days. Rita's home life is unstable, not in terms of any sort of material needs, but her mother, Marilyn, who she's played by the iconic Lee Grant here, she really struggles to connect with Rita. Grant, she's an Academy Award-winning actress. She brings a real depth to the role of a mother sort of torn between the two daughters. One fits the societal mold, and one is much more introverted. As Rita's classmates and even her own sister mock her, her isolation grows. But Rita isn't just a victim. She harbors a dark secret, a growing power that starts to manifest itself the more that she is pushed to the edge. Rita's telekinetic abilities become more deliberate and terrifying as the story unfolds. A classmate who cruelly taunted her, she falls from a rope in gym class and breaks her neck. A friend of Rita's mother, Kathleen, suffers severe burns in a bizarre accident. It's kind of interesting to compare current films to some of the made-for-TV counterparts, because if you watch a trailer now, and by the way, I'm convinced Hollywood doesn't know how to cut a trailer to save their lives, but if you watch a trailer today, there's a certain sense of spoon-feeding the information to the audience. It often goes in a very neat chronological order through the film, but this movie does not do that. This film does a nice job. It shows you something you don't fully understand, like Kathleen's sudden seizure. Her face is just on the verge of combustion as she smashes through a window and ultimately dies, but we don't know why it happened. And we don't understand Rita's reluctance on her mother visiting this sick friend, and then only later does a reveal explain why the event even happened in the first place. As the accidents pile up and Chris, Rita's younger sister, almost drowns, Marilyn becomes increasingly uneasy. She's sensing that there is something deeply wrong with her daughter. And Lee Grant does a wonderful job here of conveying these emotions. Her growing dread, it's subtle, but it's also powerful. And the younger sister, Chris, she's now terrified of Rita. The father is at his wit's end. He wants really to send Rita to a school in England and just sort of be rid of her. Marilyn tosses out the idea of Rita attending therapy, but frankly, all that is abandoned when she suspects that these events swirling around the family are not mere coincidences. Marilyn is forced to confront the unimaginable truth that Rita might be responsible for these accidents. And in a very tense confrontation, Rita actually admits, yes, that not only does she have this particular kind of power, she revels in it. The film builds to a deliberately ambiguous sort of climax. It's steering away from the flashy spectacle that audiences might be expecting. The special effects at the end of this film, even for 1977, are pretty tame. So don't go in anticipating explosive fireballs or an epic kind of showdown. Instead, the spell opts for a much subtler, more grounded portrayal of Rita's telekinetic abilities, emphasizing realism over theatrics. Brian De Palma's film Carrie just dives headlong into its dramatic flair. It has Piper Laurie's just gloriously over the top performance as Carrie's mother, and you also have Sissy Spacek's just sort of haunting vulnerability in the movie. But the spell decides to go a bit of a different route. It attempts to rationalize telekinesis as part of a kind of universal psychic energy that can be harnessed and controlled rather than as purely a supernatural phenomenon. So Rita's journey of self-discovery actually begins under the mentorship of her gym teacher, Joe Standish. She's an individual who wants to actually develop a community of sensitives, of individuals like Rita who are able to sort of tap into their latent psychic abilities. This concept isn't far removed from the idea of the Force, which is introduced in Star Wars, which premiered actually just a few months after this TV movie aired. Leela Goldani delivers a very nuanced performance as Miss Standish, the gym teacher, whose influence over Rita carries a very strong undercurrent of manipulation. Standish isn't just guiding Rita, she's kind of subtly steering her toward much more destructive uses of these burgeoning abilities, sort of hinting at a darker agenda. The very nature of their relationship actually raises some intriguing questions, particularly when viewed through a modern lens. There's an undeniable tension in the scenes where Rita sneaks out at night to visit Standish's home, where she's instructed in harnessing the forces of nature. One can't help but wonder if this was coded lesbianism sort of woven into this dynamic. It's possible that this interpretation might be reading way too much into the subtext, I'll give you that, but the implications are hard to ignore. In the context of a 1977 made-for-TV movie, very explicit exploration of that would have just been completely off the table altogether. The network censors would have never allowed it, and yet the clandestine nature of their meetings, coupled with Standish's very intense focus on Rita, it adds a layer of complexity that suggests something more than just a teacher-student relationship. And Rita becomes very incensed at the idea of Standish's desire to widen their circle, expanding teaching these abilities to form a group because, well, then she won't feel so special anymore. Whether intentional or not, these subtle hints certainly invite a re-examination of the film's portrayal of their bond, adding depth to Standish's character certainly, but also raising questions about the true nature of her interest in Rita and likewise Rita's interest in her. The film also dabbles with the idea that Rita's powers might be hereditary, sort of passed down through generations. This notion is presented a little bit like the idea of intelligence. Everybody has intelligence, but some people have a much higher capacity than others. And so perhaps Rita's gifts lie in her unique ability to tap into a reservoir of power. However, the film also sort of teases the possibility that her abilities might stem from a familial connection to witchcraft, suggesting that maybe her powers can be more than just a psychological phenomenon. This layered ambiguity actually even extends itself to the title of the movie, The Spell. They use mantras that sort of sound like incantations when they're summoning this ability, and so it sort of blurs the lines between psychic ability and witchcraft. In fact, is Rita herself under some kind of spell, or is what we're seeing just a manifestation of her teenage turmoil? This uncertainty deepens the film's exploration of whether her powers are inherited or learned and reflects on the potentially destructive consequences of unlocking such forces. Unfortunately, while all of these things are like super compelling, the movie never really chooses to explore them very much, and so a lot of its potential just ends up being completely untapped. You do have to wonder that if this movie had been willing to go a little bit farther and a little bit deeper into this, the spell might have been a lot more memorable. But I will add this, it's more than a horror movie. It's a commentary on teenage alienation, the devastating effects of bullying, and the perils of unchecked power. At the heart of this film is the complexities of the family dynamics, where favoritism and misunderstanding can lead to some tragic outcomes. This film deals with some real world issues like self esteem and body image and the desperate need for acceptance, making it a pretty compelling watch even decades later. It's pretty much largely forgotten now, but I think if you were a fan of Carrie, or even you're fond of films like The Craft, you might enjoy a slower paced, thought provoking slice of 70s nostalgia like this one. Okay, so what do you think? Does The Spell belong in our sort of made-for-TV classic Hall of Fame, or is it just a Carrie clone? Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. So please hit the like and subscribe button so that you won't miss out anytime I release a video either about some of these made-for-TV movie reviews, or I also do some other things too as well. Sometimes I'll occasionally just take one particular older horror movie and I'll review that one, or I'll do some rankings as well, and I don't want you to miss any of them. So please hit the subscribe button so you'll always be notified. Until next time, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by the crypt. Stay curious and stay scared.